What's going on, guys? This is Matt, and the GPU you're looking at right now is an RX 460, which after rebate I picked up for just over $70 new, and this is a GT 1030, which I also picked up for just over $70 new. To find the RX 460 at this price, I had to deal hunt and be patient for a few weeks until the deal arose, and the GT 1030 I just grabbed from Newegg on the spot for its MSRP. Today, I'm going to be comparing the two, both feature and performance wise, not just to see how an RX 460 and GT 1030 stack up, but to see what kind of performance difference you would gain by waiting for a deal versus purchasing a card at its MSRP. Will the performance difference between these two cards be enough to justify the extra time and effort spent hunting for a deal, or will the performance difference be so negligible that purchasing a card at MSRP makes more sense? Well, throughout this video, I'll try my best to both give you the objective numbers as well as my opinion on the results to help you decide whether deal hunting is worth it for you or not. In terms of a test system, some people like to test with super high-end systems like a 7700K with 32 gigs of RAM and an NVMe SSD, but for these tests, I decided to take a more realistic approach and pair these GPUs with a low-end, budget-centric PC featuring a Pentium G4560, 8GB of RAM, and a 1TB mechanical hard drive. I did this because I felt the system was a good representative of the type of system you might pair one of these GPUs with. The system has plenty of CPU horsepower as to not hinder the performance of either of these GPUs, while also being the type of system you would be able to upgrade in the future. I'll have the full parts list along with links to each of the parts used in the test system in the description down below. So before I get into the benchmarks, let's talk about each of these cards for a minute. The RX 460, which released in August of 2016, is a great budget 1080p video card with one of its biggest claims to fame being its low power draw. At a max power draw of 75 watts, it means this GPU only requires power from the PCIe slot itself and doesn't require any external PCIe power connectors from your power supply. This low power draw meant board partners were able to offer many interesting variants of the RX 460, including a low profile dual slot version and a passively cooled version. This, coupled with the fact the 460 supports AMD's open source FreeSync technology, means this card offers a great amount of value for the money, especially at the price I paid for it. Because the 460 only requires power from the PCIe slot, it means many people turn to this card when they look to upgrade their existing OEM PCs like HP and Dell's, only to find that support for this card was very much hit or miss. This lackluster support many times could be contributed to not enough power being pushed to the RX 460 through the PCIe slot itself, and that's where the GT 1030 comes into play. The GT 1030, which released only a few months ago in mid-2017, boasts the best performance out of a GT series card ever, along with a power draw of only 30 watts. This extremely low power draw, coupled with the fact it comes in a low-profile single-slot variant, meant it was a good choice in situations where you needed that extremely low power draw or extremely space-efficient design. Though its lack of support for NVIDIA's hardware recording program Shadowplay might be a deal-breaker for many people looking at this card. The RX 460 I'm using for today's test is a single fan card from Sapphire, which features a basic heatsink but manages to keep the GPU relatively cool and quiet. For the GT 1030, I have a passively cooled low-profile version from MSI. This card's completely silent because it has no fans, but does run pretty hot and does have the tendency to throttle in systems with bad airflow. Both these GPUs have 2GB of VRAM, and I left both of these cards at stock clocks for testing, as I figured the average person purchasing one of these cards isn't going to be overclocking, but if you want to see me make a follow-up video to this where I overclock them and compare the performance, let me know in the comment section down below. In terms of test, I use 4 popular games. Now, synthetic benchmarks are nice, but at the end of the day, all I really care about is how a GPU performs in my favorite games, and not how many points it gets in a synthetic benchmark. The games I chose to test were GTA 5, Overwatch, CSGO, and Rocket League. These are all very popular titles with varying levels of system requirements, so I figured it would be a good range of tests for these GPUs. For the 3 esports titles, I did bot matches so I could keep things as consistent as possible, and with GTA 5, I tested using the first mission on each card. So starting with GTA 5, this is the most intensive game in the benchmarking lineup and definitely pushes both of these cards very hard. I set most everything to the high setting with the exception of a few things like grass quality. This resulted in very playable frame rates on both cards with a clear victory for the RX 460. Something to note is that even though the RX 460 produced a 20% higher average than the GT 1030, 1% and 0.1% lows really weren't much higher, which resulted in a pretty similar experience. Yes, the RX 460 did provide a slightly better experience that side by side was noticeable, but in the end, both cards provided a very playable experience with the 460 being slightly overall better. Moving on to Overwatch, the second most demanding game on the list, I set things to what I would consider medium. Again, the RX 460 took the victory with about a 16% increase in average frame rate and a noticeable bump in 1% and 0.1% lows. Overall, again, both provided a very enjoyable experience, but the RX 460 did perform noticeably better. Moving on to CSGO, the RX 460 again took the victory with an increase in FPS of over 20% over the GT 1030, with a significant jump in 0.1% lows, but very similar 1% lows. Again, both cards provided a good experience, but the RX 460 provided a noticeably better experience. The final game I tested was Rocket League, which I set to max settings. The RX 460 completely crushed the GT 1030 in average frame rates, 1% lows and 0.1% lows. The GT 1030 still provided a good experience, but it really wasn't at all comparable to the RX 460 in this game. From what I've seen on these tests and from just playing around with these cards, I found on average the RX 460 was about 20% faster than the GT 1030, while keeping in mind I paid the same amount of money for each of these cards, plus or minus a few dollars. Overall, I don't think either of these cards are bad and think both of them have their place in the market, but if my system supported both, I would take the RX 460 over the GT 1030 every day of the week. Not only is it a fair bit faster, but it also supports FreeSync and GPU hardware recording through AMD Relive. So with all this being said, let's address the original question that was presented at the start of this video. Is deal hunting worth it in this case? For me, yes it was. It took me about 5 minutes a day checking r/build-a-PC sales over the course of about a week and a half to find this deal, but at the end of the day, it may not be worth it for you. It's really up for you to decide. If you're young, have a lot of free time, and money is tight, deal hunting on stuff like Reddit's Build-a-PC sales or Slick Deals can net you some serious savings. If you want to see an example of this where I deal hunt using Build-a-PC sales for an entire budget gaming system, then I'll have a link to my recent $275 build linked in the card above or description down below. So conclusion time. Spending a few minutes a day looking for GPU deals netted me a 20% increase in performance for the same exact price. Deal hunting for me, especially at this point in my life, is very much worth it, but it may not be worth it for you, and that's okay. I just hope that this video was a good example, and if you guys have any questions about deal hunting or anything else, make sure to leave them in the comment section down below, and I'll do my best to respond to as many of them as I can. So yeah guys, I think this wraps this video up. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up, as well as consider subscribing for more PC and tech related content in the future. And as always, this is Matt from Tech by Matt, signing out.